Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Paving the Way Forward. We're excited to join you all today, and please do me a favor: share this link with somebody. Share this broadcast with somebody that you know who could use this information. Somebody in your family, a friend. Shoot, it could be a foe, an enemy. It's the holidays. Be nice to everybody. But anybody you know who could use this information to help them. You know, I know this is a part of the year where we give gifts to people, and this may be the greatest gift you give somebody: the ability to protect their wealth. Um, it's particularly what we're going to be talking about today. If you ever seen, you want to know the importance of home ownership, just watch how people fight over their deceased loved one's property. It's a little small 6-letter word called equity, and everybody wants a part of it. So I am excited about the panel we have today. Wells Fargo, in partnership with the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, has come together to make these presentations to give people education around home ownership, maintaining your home, the maintenance on the home. That's a big one. How to finance property, how to select the right property, neighborhood, schools, all of those things. And we don't want you to get a home, to God to bless you with a home, and then you end up losing it through foreclosure. That would be a wasted blessing, and it's not good stewardship. So shout out to the panelists today. We're excited about any one of them, each and every one of them, I should say. And I'd like to introduce them now. We'll start with Rulon Washington. He's the executive director on the East Coast side. Wells Fargo, and ladies, that is his real beard. That's not a beard unit. That's my man, Rulon. And next is Rulon's partner in home ownership education, my guy Martin Sanchez. Que pasa, hermano Martin? Huh? How'd I do? Did I do well with that?
Yes.
I'm bilingual, man. Martin's on the West Coast. He's in California, where he serves as, he's also executive director of Wells Fargo. And I want to say, if you're a member of the Hispanic or Latino community today and you're watching, we will work hard to answer any of your questions. You can just type them in the chat in Spanish, and hey, Rulon will answer it. He's got you. Actually, Martin will we'll work hard to make sure we address any concerns you're having. Next up is a man who needs no introduction. He doesn't need hair on his head or his face, because he's the Michael Jordan of this thing. This is our GOAT in this space. He is none other than Mr. Herman Palmer. He is the Vice President of Outreach and Inclusion for the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. And finally, it's so good that we don't just have to look at each other today, guys. We are blessed on this panel with attorney J.C. Fisher. She is a senior associate attorney with Gregory Varner and Associates, based in Birmingham, Alabama. And we're really excited to have her here with us today, not only for diversity, but for her subject matter expertise, particularly in the area of focus today that we're going to be talking about. But she has expertise in the state law, real estate law, estate planning, probate law, just to name a few. All right, welcome and great afternoon from all of us on the East Coast to our panelists. Great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you for having us.
And please excuse any dings that happen. I do not know, and my children are not here to stop them. I don't know how to stop my laptop from dinging. Amen. I'm just cool that I'm on here. I want to start today by welcoming everybody joining us. Again, I'm Keith Battle. I'm hosting for today. And today we're primarily addressing the subject of heirs property. Heirs property. So what that's all about, and why it's important for us to know how to protect ourselves from it, how to recover whatever we're in jeopardy of losing when we're facing heirs property. So it's going to be really important today. But before we go into that topic, Herman, please share with our audience the reasons why Wells Fargo is involved in this kind of work and helping people in this space of home ownership. Talk to us about and secondly, tell us why the FCC specifically is addressing this issue of heirs property.
Sure.
I think it's because Wells Fargo as an organization is forward thinking, intent on building home ownership in all communities. For that to happen, it is incredibly helpful if we all have access to subject matter expertise, insight, and the funding sources necessary to make the dream of home ownership attainable for us all. From an NFCC perspective, because we are a HUD certified nonprofit intermediary whose role is to help consumers address issues or concerns that might prevent them from being able to qualify for a mortgage, we then become that critical counseling resource that helps to address and cure those issues. To that point, to the point when the consumer becomes mortgage ready and learn to better understand all that's involved, the requirements associated with homeownership, and are then able to obtain and maintain the responsibilities of being a homeowner successfully, affordably, for the long term across generations.
Now, right there, Herman, I'm sorry to interrupt you because I unintentionally told you to tell us why Wells Fargo is involved in this. That would be unfair for you to say. Before you talk about the NFCC's interest in heirs property, let's hear from Martin or Rulon. Why is Wells Fargo? Why is it so important that you all invest time and money in educating people in this series, Paving the Way?
So Martin and I, our journey in this space started out during the housing crisis, and that was one of the most difficult times in my 18-year career with Wells Fargo, because you are helping families that are going through one of the toughest times in their lives, right? And as we think about being in that space, there were a lot of tears, a lot of excitement in getting the help. But, Wells Fargo at that point, between 2010, 2014, we had over 9 million mortgage customers, right? And when you think about the information, the guidance that's needed in order to support your customers, it's so valuable to work with the National Foundation for Credit Counseling and other organizations that really provide that type of support, right? Because as a bank, there's only but so much we can do, right? We can create products, programs, but we can't go as deep as a partnership can with a nonprofit organization. And so one of the things that Martin and I thought about is, as we grow in this space, how can we connect the dots, right? Because we're busy saving people, helping them with their homes and trying to figure out how we can manage that situation. But really the education and the process and the resources and the support should start at the front, right? At the beginning. And so how do we connect the dots from helping someone understand the process of getting into a home? How do they keep the home? If someone unfortunately passes away, how do they maintain that property for generational wealth? Unfortunately, Black and brown families, we are on the lowest portion of the homeownership journey, right? So we have the lowest rates. How do we work together to provide the insight, the information, and the resources to really help bridge that gap, to raise that rate? And this is our part, right? And there is no better partner than the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, not only because Herman and his mission really focuses on some of the things that we believe in as a company, but it just makes sense for us to understand the journey of a homeowner. So as opposed to just helping them when they need the help, why not step in and provide the information and the resources through a platform like Paving the Way Forward to make sure we can support homeownership so that way that generational wealth can be retained?
That's right. We spend so much time saving for a down payment, getting our credit cleaned up, purchasing the home, making repairs to the home, raising our families in the home. And what a shame it would be if that home were to go to foreclosure or for some reason not be able to pass down to the next generation, to your kids or to grandkids. So we at Wells Fargo, we want to make sure we spend just as much time and effort helping you to get into the home as we do is helping you stay in the home and maintain generational wealth.
That's right.
Poverty is paralyzing.
It is.
And one of the things that actually accelerates growth economically, academically, professionally, even spiritually, morally, just in your dreams, what you are capable of dreaming of and expecting in your life, sometimes starts with somebody in the family bought a house. Mm-hmm. And that house gave opportunity for academic access because we took out a second to put the kids through school. Like it's to be a renter is a risk. Boy, I got bars today. Poverty paralyzes, renters are at risk. Let's go now to JC. JC, you are a partner in a law firm or a senior associate attorney in this law firm in Birmingham. And first of all, can you define heirs property, what it is, and why we need to be concerned about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So heirs property is basically real estate that's owned by numerous heirs or relatives or descendants of a deceased person. So that's the most basic description that I can give about what heirs property is. It's what separates it from what other people hear as tenants in common, where you just own property with a business partner or another person that's not related to you. Heirs property is property owned by multiple heirs. And it typically occurs when someone dies without a formal estate planning strategy. So they haven't done, any estate planning to say where the property is supposed to go. So they die intestate or without an estate plan, and the state determines who receives the property and in what shares. Other ways that it's caused is, maybe you die with a last will and testament, but you put in the language of the last will and testament, all my children, like the soap opera. And so now all of your children own the property in equal shares. And so you have now created, through a will, heirs property. Another thing is you may have a will. It may not create heirs property, but nobody ever probates the will. Nobody actually files the will with the court to have it probated after you die. And so then the state is saying, well, we don't have a will to determine who this person wanted their property to go to. We will decide where the property goes. And so that's kind of your basic definition of heirs property and typically how it is caused. But I also want to note that with heirs property, it's kind of related to this term we called cloudy title or tangled title. And we hear that in these spaces of lending and mortgages and real estate. And the reason that we use those terms, cloudy title, tangled title, is because the title is just unclear. It's unclear who the actual owners are. With heirs property, there's typically not a deed in the heirs' names. It's usually in the name of a deceased person. And so if an heir is trying to apply for a loan or trying to get disaster relief, they don't have a legal document to say, I am an owner of this property. And that's cloudy title, tangled title. It's just a mess. So that's kind of the basic definition, maybe not basic, but that's the general definition of heirs property.
So understanding these terms, and I know I got to come back to you, Herman. Understanding these terms is so important. And one I want you to define is probate. And I think it's important because when you're ignorant or unlearned in an area, you tend to be so intimidated by it, you just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. In spite of the fact that not dealing with it can be very consequential. Yes. You're hoping that's my mama. Well, that's my mother house. That's MUVA for those you take. That's my mother house. Yeah, that's your mother house, but that don't make it yours if it's a cloudy title. My. So as we try to, this is why this is so important. It's education clears up clouds, and it empowers people to say, okay, I can do this. We just need to do this. Define probate for me, and maybe just one thing somebody can do who's, let's say a homeowner right now, getting up in age, and just saying, what one thing that they need to do after you define probate to move in the direction of clearing up title?
Okay, so with the probate question, I want to give you kind of a practical example. So I'll get clients who come to me and say, my father just passed away, and of course I'll give my condolences, and then they'll say, when will be the reading of the will? Like, when will the reading of the will occur? Like, we're in Gunsmoke Bonanza, like we're going to gather at the town hall, and like the town lawyer's going to read the will. And it is a common misconception and misunderstanding that just because you have a will, that's it. Like, when you die, whatever's on the paper is what the family needs to do. They don't need to do anything with the will. They just need to read it. And that's not true. And we don't know that because we're never taught things like that. The average layperson is just not taught that. And so what has to happen with that will when you die is someone has to admit it to probate. And probate is a process where the will is declared valid by a court, by a probate court, and where the court appoints a personal representative or an executor to divvy out your assets pursuant to what you put in the will. So that's the probate process. It's a process of validating the will. That's literally all it is. Yeah. But it is done through the court system. And so many people don't know that they need to do that. And then we'll have some clients who will die with a will, but they never told their children they had one. Because our communities, typically, at least for the African American community, talking about death is just so taboo. You know, we don't want to talk to our children about death or estate planning because of all these different reasons, right? Sometimes it's as simple as, you know, your grandmother may say, look, I don't want you all up in my business. Or if we talk about wills, that means you're trying to kill me off or you're wishing death on me. And it's like, my grandma used to always say, two things are inevitable. You're going to have to pay taxes, you're going to be black. Oh, excuse me, three things, and you're going to die. So, you know, there's some things that we need to talk about. And if you do a will, tell your children where it is. Tell your personal representative where it's located, because if they don't know where it is, they can't admit it to probate. And so for your second question about, you know, where do they kind of start with clearing title? I actually want to go back just a little bit before the clearing title process and just say that if you're a homeowner that wants to prevent heirs property, what I defined earlier, you need an estate plan. And you need to begin talking to your family about death and legacy. I mean, really, legacy is what we're talking about here. We can no longer afford to just do nothing. I mean, if you look at the statistics of Black land loss, I mean, even just looking at Black farmers, we're talking about 1910, Black farmers had, 16 million acres. And then in 2017, when they did the agricultural census, we were down to 4.7 million. Only 0.5% of all farmland is owned by Black farmers. And that's just the farmers. That's not including just like Black landowners and general Black land loss. We cannot afford to sit by and do nothing. And so I encourage you, if you're a homeowner, and not just an elderly one, a young one like me, I encourage you to get an estate plan and get it early while you're still in your right mind, while you're still, spring chicken. Get your estate plan to protect your family and give them the greatest gift you can, which is to allow them to grieve and not worry about what you would have wanted, and not wonder what you would have wanted, and not fight about what you would have wanted. Get an estate plan to prevent this from the get-go.
Okay, we'll go further into that. Herman, before you communicate, you got to do what she did and show your youth that you're a young, certified counselor.
Yes, certified. So one thing I want to build on what she mentioned was, it helps to be organized. It's not just enough that you have a will, but you need to have, and I started writing, will, insurance, bank statements, security bonds, any investment you have, put them in one place so that it's not a treasure hunt after a person dies. That's important. And in terms of why it's so dramatic when people die and they don't want to talk about it, how, I'm sure it happens in all communities, but especially in our community, we do things a little different. We get married without getting married. All right. And then we got cousins that are siblings and we don't know. And so all that stuff comes out. So as soon as you start bringing up death, people start thinking about all the secrets that are about to be told. Now I'm not ready for that. I'm gonna put it off. Mm-hmm. So that can, and it's a lot of it's around pride. And like we said before, your pride can get you put outside of your home, outside of your investments, outside of your family. So deal with it. We got to own our stuff and take the proper precautions to take care of the administration of our wealth to make sure it goes where we want it to go, to the right people in the right time.
Some of those houses probably look like crime scenes. Once people dies, people try to rummage through drawers and closets and shoe boxes trying to find the stuff. Because everybody wants to know where it is. And but to know that, somebody said, well, I did the will and they secured it, but they didn't go through probate. That's a big lesson for me today to take away. And before I go to let's go to Rulon and Martin now. Why is this heirs and property issue of particular importance to you guys in Wells Fargo?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's you run into unforeseen circumstances, but preparation is going to be key. One of the toughest things, and I reference the housing crisis a lot because heirs property and maintaining the home has a lot to do with what we went through 15 to 20 years ago, right? Martin and I, we both seen a ton of families that have went through the process of, unfortunately, on the cusp of losing their home. A borrower passes away, and then there's a family member that wants to keep the home, but their sibling may want to sell the home. And now there's a conflict of interest in what to do with that property, but there's still a mortgage associated with the home. And so that becomes extremely difficult because if there's not an executor of the estate or someone authorized to speak on behalf of the home, even the small changes to the home can't be made because you're not authorized to make decisions on the mortgage. And that becomes problematic because that mortgage, unfortunately, is still going to be due, right? And so we think about information on the front end. Preparation is always going to be key, right? My mom always said, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, right? And so how do we provide the right type of information? And the platform that we have with Paving the Way Forward, it's the perfect place for us to share these tips and tools, right? Where else can you get information in the cheat code, the cheat sheet on how to manage your asset before you are under the gun and not able to make those adjustments in real time? One of the worst scenarios to be in is when a family loses a loved one, you're dealing with that stress, that trauma, and then you have to deal with this asset and you don't know how to manage it, right? The mortgage still needs to be paid. Things still need to be taken care of. But without the tools and tips, does everyone take their hands off the wheel and say, well, I don't know what to do with it, so we'll just let it go into foreclosure, right? How do we provide the information up front? And that's one of the positions Wells Fargo wants to be in, to be that information provider when it comes down to supporting homeownership.
Sounds good. Yeah. Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, so let me define the work we do a little bit more. So there is a mortgage lender and a mortgage servicer. So what is the difference between the two? Mortgage lender, we do both. Wells Fargo, we do both. But mortgage lender, that would be the organization or the lender that actually provides the original mortgage when you sign on the dotted line. But then for the next, say, 15 to 30 years, when you're making your mortgage payments and you're receiving a bill in the mail, that is the mortgage servicer. It does not necessarily have to be the same lender that you started off with. Many times with Wells Fargo customers, it is the same lender. We stay with you throughout the years. But we want to make sure all the listeners know about the assistance that is available to our customers, to our mortgage customers who are with us for the next 30 or so years, that if you are struggling, if there is any issue with, perhaps it's death in the family, perhaps it's divorce, sickness, all these different situations where your income can be impacted and you cannot make the payment or is no longer affordable for you, we have assistance available for you. We can help you with that. The most important thing we would suggest you to do is to contact us as soon as you know that there's a layoff happening or any type of financial struggle that is going to happen. Let us know and we can assist you. Also, NFCC, National Foundation for Credit Counseling, they're excellent source. Visit the website that's down below, wellsfargo.com/mortgage education to learn more.
Hey, thanks for that. And please visit that website to get more information. I was just thinking from my side of the world in pastoral ministry in the church, when a parent dies, particularly if it's a matriarch in the family, the devastation in the family is hard to quantify. The last thing on people's mind is, anybody pick up the house payment?
Yeah.
It's so much devastation around just, why my mama? Why is this happening to us? But if it's sudden, if it's drawn out, it's just, so I wouldn't even thought of like, anybody gonna make these payments? Because
Right.
the business, the people, the mortgage people are not, they didn't know your mother or your father, right? They just know you're delinquent. So this is so helpful. We're going to take a quick break here and go to a video. Roland acts on the side. So let's check out this video. We'll be right back.
Models.
For many, the American dream of homeownership feels a bit out of reach. Owning a home isn't just about a roof, it's about building wealth and security for future generations. That's why Wells Fargo is a leading lender for people of color, and we're going further. The benefits of homeownership go beyond bricks and mortar. It's about stability, community, and opening doors for our brighter future. Unlock your dream. Visit wellsfargo.com today.
This message is a collaboration between Wells Fargo and the National Foundation for Credit Counseling.
I love it. Great job, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Listen, I got a question that's kind of for all of you, because it goes back to what you taught. You taught us last time, Herman, that it's important to know, if you're talking to somebody, that they're a certified nonprofit housing counselor. So there are people out here feigning something that maybe, they may even be out to take advantage of you. So I want to set this question up like this, and y'all don't know this question is coming, but that's why I like getting y'all like this. So y'all know what a squatter is, right? Everybody knows what a squatter is. That's somebody who takes advantage of a vulnerable situation. So the house is empty, it's unprotected. So a squatter goes in, not necessarily to purchase the home, but to take advantage of an empty space. And so I want to see if I can kind of connect squatting to this space. So let's say you got a family who's, because of a cloudy title, or they don't have the right paperwork, haven't gone through probate, or whatever the situation, the house is now vulnerable, right? Are there squatters in this space? Not somebody that wants to necessarily move into a vacant home, but somebody who's moving in to take advantage of people who just don't know their rights and what you follow what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Let's talk about that. Anybody, like, who's squatting in this business? Because one of the things that we've tried to build rapport with our community that follows this educational process that this team has put together is that they trust that we're going to give them the right information. The skepticism in our world is high. So can anybody speak to exposing people who take advantage of people who just don't know what their rights are? I preached last Sunday. When you know your rights, even when you get pulled over by the police, you have more confidence in that exchange because you know your rights. If you don't know, you have a right to remain silent if you're under arrest. And when you don't know your rights, you don't know what to say or not do. Anybody want to tackle that one?
Yeah, so I'm happy to discuss.
Jason. Yeah.
I'm happy to discuss kind of the equivalent of that in the heirs property space, which, in my opinion, it's kind of twofold. I mean, you do have squatters that maybe are non-heirs or non-owners who may actually literally move onto a property, or maybe it doesn't look like they move onto the property. Maybe it looks like they're hunting on your property. Maybe it's that they're moving their fence line over 30 feet per year. They just keep encroaching a little more on your property. That's kind of what we are looking for with heirs property issues, because so many heirs property owners are absentee owners in the South, in the rural South anyway. They live up north since the big migration of, during and after Jim Crow. And so they're not in the South to actually look at their property. So that's one parallel to that. But then I kind of want to look at it more from a developer perspective. I do very complex partition litigation, where, forced sale litigation, where I defend against that. And so what we often see is the developer kind of playing that role of preying on small interest holders. So heirs that may have like a 1 to 10% interest. Maybe the property is in Alabama and the heir lives in Chicago. The developer, who is often, to be honest, a real estate attorney or has a really good real estate attorney, contacts that heir in Chicago, literally sends them a letter and says, I understand that you own an interest in this 147-acre property with this house on it. I'll pay you $50,000 within 30 days if you sign this quitclaim deed and closed, and I'll send you your check in 30 days. That's what we're seeing most of, is these developers kind of preying on disinterested heirs who don't have ties to the land, or really just maybe have never even visited the land because their family migrated in the 60s and 70s. And so the developer then acquires, let's say, a 10% interest in the property, and then the developer files what's called a partition action to have the property sold or to force a sale of all of the interests in the property, including the heirs. And so that's the equivalent of kind of what you're talking about. From a general squatter aspect. In the heirs property space, we see it really as developers being the people taking advantage of these policies and systems in place. And then we have laws to protect against them in some states. And though that law would be the Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act, otherwise known as the UPHPA. Now, not every state has that. Alabama was the third state to pass it in the country in 2014, but there are some states that are still vulnerable and do not have a UPHPA, Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act. That includes North Carolina, Louisiana, states with major heirs property issues. They do not have a law that gives landowners or heirs more rights in partition forced sale lawsuits. And so I just wanted to draw that parallel for the heirs property space of what we see as kind of the predators or the people that play kind of the predatory role in this space.
Yeah, because even what you said, if I get a letter saying, hey, I hear you have ownership in this property and it's in Alabama, and you have, in 30 days you get $50,000. Well, one, first of all, I don't have time to do anything else but get that 50,000 if it's legit. It's so much scamming going out here. I don't even want to give you my bank information to wire me. I don't even want to give you my address. So they may come away with no responsibility to that person because there's so much like what do you call it? People are just suspicious in general, right? Even the people who have rights are suspicious.
But there's nothing that they lose. Here's the issue. The heir, what I mean by that is the heir doesn't see it as an asset because they've never seen it. They've never put their toes in the dirt. They've never put their feet on the grass. They just heard that grandma had some property, but the family is so disconnected that they don't understand the value of the asset that they're getting ready to sign a deed for. And so by the time that's why the predators pick on the people that have migrated somewhere else or their parents migrated somewhere else, because they don't understand the value in, number one, home ownership, to be frank, like many times. But number two, a big old piece of land that God ain't making no more of. And so for them, even if they think, ooh, this could be a scam, all they got to do is sign a piece of paper and they may get a check. and these letters, I have several copies of them because my clients will give them to me. They are, I hate to say it, they're beautiful. They're written by attorneys. They are very thorough. They give assurances that the deed will be held in trust and not recorded until you receive payment. They have websites you can go to. They give you a phone number to call so you can speak with a direct person about any questions you have. They make it way too easy for you to sign away your rights to a very valuable asset that you have no idea is valuable. And so it is a very, it's a well thought out and thorough plan that is literally legal land theft. Like literally legal land theft. And it is happening every day down here in the South and other areas of the country.
And let me break it down for you like this.
Yes, sir.
One reason why it's able to happen is because we're at a point now where everybody's free. All right. But back in the day, a person of color owning land was a huge, significant familial accomplishment.
Yeah.
Because of the nation's history. But having land wasn't nothing better. 2, the heirs don't have, to your point, JC, don't have memories connecting them to the land, keeping it vibrant and valuable. 3, let me quantify the impact. If they're offering you 50,000, trust and believe it's worth 50 million. They're not just out here giving money away. No, there's a reason behind it. So understand, if you're being offered 50,000, I need you to really think about that. And if your whole family agrees, fine, negotiate. Don't just take the first number because you think it's big. All right. Second, 4th, get the money up front. All right. Because you're taking the risk to get scammed. If you sign, that check hadn't been received, that check hadn't cleared. Think about this. Families need to be of one accord. If you know your family is in a situation where you have heirs property, y'all need to meet and come to one accord. What are we going to do?
Right.
And don't put it off. Understand what you're going to do. You might have 10 people involved. 9 might not have a vision for it, but 1 might. Keep it in the family. Support that familiar vision that you retain land ownership. And the other part is, because what JC said, in some states, that shows you that it's different for different states. That means you need subject matter expertise. Don't be cheap with this. Make sure you protect yourself and your legacy. Your generation might not have a vision for it, but subsequent generations might. That's why heirs property is an issue, and we need to respect it and treat it seriously.
Wow.
Yeah, Pastor Bob, let me chime in there. I actually was taking notes. So JC, I took some notes. So if you send me a bill, I understand, because I took some notes. So let's think about this. When there's a mortgage associated with the property, there is a perception that the mortgage servicer will be responsible for evicting the squatter or managing that portion of that interaction. But really, that's a civil issue, right? The role of the servicer is to make sure the property is maintained. So making sure that there's no broken windows, that there's locks on the doors, making sure the grass is cut, right? So there's no issues with the city that particular property is in, because there will be fines that are associated with the property if the yard is unkept or if it is an unsafe space. And really the role of the borrower in that space is to pay the mortgage. Once the mortgage stops being paid, that mortgage servicer, it's a window of time where they go back to see, okay, is the property vacant? So there's a window of time where there's no interaction with the mortgage servicer. And that's where we see squatters come in. Now it becomes complicated because now that borrower, or maybe that family member of the deceased borrower, wants to have a conversation to move forward or maybe correct the mortgage through a modification or even to sell. But they have someone that's living in the house. And that person that's in the house, they can become clever. They can go online and get a lease. They can forge a signature. Now it's a civil issue between law enforcement, local law enforcement, and the family. And that becomes really tough. And there's an assumption that the mortgage company, hey, there's someone living in my house, you need to get them out of there. Unfortunately, the role of the mortgage servicer doesn't allow us to be a part of the civil decision, because we have to proceed with the foreclosure proceedings, which now is a ticking time bomb. So the family's dealing with the foreclosure, and they're also dealing with getting this family or this person out of the home, so that way they can make that decision to either keep or sell. So there is a perception that the mortgage servicer can somehow influence that interaction, but it's really difficult from the mortgage servicer's perspective. So I wanted to add that wrinkle in there too.
Yeah, and to your point, Roland, you just listed, they're dealing with the civil issue, they're dealing with the property issue, they're dealing with the upkeep of the property issue and all these things, but they're also dealing with grief.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which has its own processes in therapy and counseling and acceptance and anger and guilt. All of those things play into it's like a perfect storm. And everybody's not thinking straight when they're grieving.
So
You got to have somebody who's solid enough to say, here's the play when this goes down, right? That's what those do not resuscitate
DNO.
right. All of that stuff, we can better serve our families by preparing them and say, here's the play when the defense is doing a all-out blitz. This is the audible. This is the play we got to run in this situation. Because if you don't pre-plan, trying to react to all this stuff could be overwhelming. Let's be realistic. So this is
let me
strategy.
piggyback to that. Let me piggyback to that. So let us plan when we're calm and we can have a conversation and share with everybody. Let us put the mortgage, our bank statements, and insurance. Imagine, say the grandparent dies. We were talking about the house is still in the mortgage, that payment has to be paid. Imagine if with that mortgage note, you also have the insurance papers and the will so that you can get the death certificate. You can then go and get the insurance cleared so that you can get the payment and continue the payments because you had that person who died, their insurance pay, their life insurance is now paying for the property while the family navigates their grief. Being organized that way can help mitigate the drama and the tragedies resulting from that grief period.
Yeah, because you're going to have sustained grief and anger and disappointment if, in addition to losing the matriarch and patriarch, somebody 2 years later said, and we lost the house too.
Because you didn't follow up or you didn't do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, somebody will get slapped at the cookout. That's what's going to happen. And the law enforcement will be reintroduced to the whole situation. And I'm calling JC for a whole different reason now.
Absolutely.
Somebody lay hands on me. So let's talk about this culturally, because Martin, even though we have our cultural colloquialisms and we laugh about things that really hurt us, but that's how we manage it. But we know it's true. It's kind of funny. Do you find this to be an issue in the Latino and Hispanic community as well? I'm assuming so.
I think it's just human nature where people just don't feel comfortable speaking about death. What's going to happen? You know, how the home is going to be divided or where the assets go, preparing, putting things aside in a safe with everything properly in a nice, clean book. That is just, people just don't want to do that. It's human nature. It's easier to just, figure it out later. But when they die, what happens to the kids or whoever's left behind? What do? They're left in shambles emotionally, in terms of like what to do next, in terms of making the payments. Was life insurance ever purchased? Across the board, we have the same issues. Absolutely.
Yeah. And to that point, JC, is this more of a, certain housing issues have a demographic and geographic kind of concentration to them. We see them in certain communities and cultures more than others. Is this more of a global issue? Is this really central to certain low income or communities? What do you find around heirs property issues? Is it global? Or is it more concentrated?
Yeah. So if we're talking nationally, the Southeast United States absolutely takes the biggest hit. And I mean, we know that from the data, from the maps. My very good friend, Dr. Ryan Thompson out of Auburn University, has the full data for the entire country on where the heirs property is located. So I've seen the maps. I know where it's concentrated in the Southeast United States. And a big reason for that is the migration from Jim Crow and after Jim Crow, people fleeing the South, and there being all these heirs kind of just like left over, people forgetting that they owned land in the South because they bought property up north. And so they planned for the property up north that they lived in, but they forgot to plan for the property down south. And so we see it in the Southeast United States. We see it in urban areas as well. So New York has a huge heirs property tangled title issue. Philadelphia has a big tangled title issue. The difference there with the urban heirs property is that you don't have land to work with. You don't have the option for a physical division of the land. So let's say you have 5 heirs. You have a brownstone. How are you going to split a brownstone into 5 pieces? So they're dealing with like a whole nother issue with their heirs property. And so, but demographically, a lot of people don't want to hear this, but there is technically, and this is just from the data and statistics, there is technically more white heirs property than any other demographic. But that's because, I mean, there's a lot of Appalachia, right? So we've got lots of poor white people that did not do estate planning either. We also just have poor people. We have indigent people who do not do estate planning because they don't know about it. They can't afford legal services. They don't have access to free legal services even. They're in what we call legal deserts. And so statistically, it is true that there is more white heirs property than Black heirs property, but it has affected financially, when we're talking about the racial wealth gap, it has financially affected minority landowners more than any other demographic, because you're talking about I think it's like over $300 billion loss in land since 1910, if you're looking at present day values for Black landowners. And so there's just a significant disparity of financial wealth and this racial wealth gap that's related to land loss. So I hope that kind of explains it. But I'm mainly concerned, to be frank, about Black land ownership because of that racial wealth gap. I am very concerned that, right after slavery, all of these Black free slaves, or formerly slaves that are now been freed, got all this property, were not provided with the knowledge on how to steward that property from a business and management perspective, and then lost the property as a result of legal land theft and other practices, and just didn't know what to do to keep it for generations. So that's really what I focus on in my practice.
Excellent. We're going to take another quick break to check out this video from Herman Palmer. But to our audience, if you have any questions, things you want us to address, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to address them. Now, let's go to...
Blemish Credit doesn't have to mean the end of your dream of home ownership. Nonprofit HUD-certified credit counseling is a safe resource that can help you manage debt and ensure a bright financial future. The National Foundation for Credit Counseling serves all 50 states and offers counseling at low or no cost. To learn more about HUD-certified credit counseling, visit nfcc.org or call 844-865-3028 today. This message was sponsored in part by Wells Fargo.
Excellent job. Now, of course.
Does Herman do acting and modeling, you said as well?
No. Yeah, I break too many cameras.
Yeah, he does swimsuit editions.
Very nice.
But one piece from my head to my toe.
Leave
that alone.
We're talking ideals in that with proper education and application and planning, we can prevent this problem, heirs property. So first I want to ask you, JC, and thanks again to each of you for your contribution around this topic and around homeownership in general. First of all, is there anything else that people need to know to prepare on the front end to avoid? But also, let's start further addressing those. Hey, it's just too late. It already happened. You're already in an heirs property situation. You didn't even know what to call it. You just know that the wheel stopped turning and everything's stuck. In addition to any additional preventative measures, what can a person do if they're stuck in heirs property What are some of the steps they need to take? Who do they need to contact? Where do they need to go?
Yes. So if you want to prevent heirs property, like I said, you need a formal estate plan. You need an estate plan. And when I talk about estate plan, I'm not talking about you just need a will. You need a will, an advanced health directive, a durable power of attorney. You need, maybe you need a trust. Maybe you need something that is more robust or more complex than a will.
When would you need a trust? I'm sorry to interrupt. When would you make the distinction between a will being a part of the estate plan versus a trust?
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons why people get a trust, and so I could go on about that forever. But one example would be you have a piece of property that you've owned since 1878. Your ancestor got it after slavery was abolished, and you want to keep it in the property for many, many, many years to come. You want all of the family to be able to go there and to enjoy the property and to benefit and to share in income and profits and expenses, but you don't want it to be heirs property where everyone individually owns it. So you may put it in a trust so that the whole family can be beneficiaries of that trust and then benefit from the property, enjoy the property, but the trust and the trustees own and manage that property for the benefit of the family. So that's one kind of easy example of why you may get a trust. Big Mama's house, maybe you put it in a trust, because that's Big Mama's house and you want to go back every Thanksgiving or whatever. The other thing about that is you don't need to do your own estate planning. You don't need to go on LegalZoom and do your own estate planning. You really don't. There are enough free legal resources, pro bono, legal aid, law clinics at law schools. They're just out there. And so getting the word out about them is so important. And, if you can afford to go see an estate planning attorney, go see an estate planning attorney, whether that's through a pro bono legal aid clinic or through a private attorney. So that's the first thing on preventing it. Let's say you have heirs property. What's done has been done. The top of the pressure cooker, which is the matriarch, has blown off and everything has blown over the pot. The first, I want to give you 3 practical things that you need to get started, some of which do not require an attorney to start. Number 1, you need to find that original deed to your ancestor. So if it is grandmother, then you need to find grandma's deed, the deed to grandma when she bought the property. If it's granddaddy and granddaddy died before grandma, then get granddaddy's deed. Get the original deed that got into your family, that got the property into your family. Find that first. You can find that at your local probate office or the local land records in your county, typically the county where the property is located, okay? And you don't need an attorney to do that. You can go there, ask the clerks to help you find the deed in grandma, grandpa, great grandma's name, whoever. The second thing you need to do is when you find out the ancestor that actually purchased the land or received the land, you need to create a family tree. So you need to start with the ancestor that originally purchased the land and then branch all the way down to the last living heirs. So I'll give you an example. If my mom is still alive and she is an heirs property owner, the tree stops with her on her branch because I am not an heir until she dies. So I wouldn't need to be on the family tree because my mom is still living. So I'm not an heir yet. I'm an heir apparent. Once she dies, I will become an heir. So I would stop at her. But you need to do a family tree starting with the original ancestor, going all the way down the branch. And then inside of your branches, you kind of stop at those last living heirs. You need to include on that family tree dates of death, at the very least the year of death, because when you go to determine who the owners are and how people inherited, especially when they didn't have a will, it will depend on who died first. Okay. So you need to have the year people are like, well, where do I find that information? There's a lot of different things. Family Bibles usually have the obituaries in them, grandma's family Bible under her mattress or in her closet. Find.com, legacy.com, ancestry.com. There's all kinds of places you can find people's dates of death. Okay. So that's a vacation Bible school project for the kids, get the family tree done. So the family tree needs to be done. You need to have that done before you go to the attorney, unless you are facing an emergency situation, like you have been sued with a partition action and you need an attorney ASAP. If you're just like you're outside of court, you're trying to clear up the title, get the family tree done. Do not pay an attorney to do your family tree. That is a waste of money. You need a title search. Okay. So that is where you will need an attorney, or you will need a title company or something to perform a title search or title abstract on your property. Okay. And you need to consult with an attorney that's licensed in the state where your property is located. So if you live in Chicago, but your property is in Alabama, you need to consult with an Alabama attorney. Okay. So because the law will depend on where the property is located. So get a title search report. Every heirs property owner needs a title search. And in my professional opinion, and I've worked with hundreds of heirs property owners over the years, you need a title opinion. So an attorney needs to review and evaluate and examine that title search report, that all the deeds and the chain of title, everything. They need to look at your family tree, and they need to write up a title opinion to say who exactly the owners are, what fractional interests they own, and they need to propose realistic strategies on how to clear the title. And if you're a landowner that's trying to resolve this, make sure that the attorney tells you the proposed costs of clear title, all of the steps along the way, that you feel empowered, that there is a strategy in place. And I want to encourage you to also use your discernment and feel empowered to ask questions about things you don't understand. If you feel like an attorney is giving you the runaround and they're just like, look, just sell this. This is just too much to deal with. Don't even worry about it. It is okay for you to walk out the door. It's okay for you to say, thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye. I'm going to go get a second opinion. Yep. Because land is the greatest asset you can have. And God is not making any more of it.
That's right.
So anyway, that's like my spiel answer to your question, but I could talk about this all day. So I'm going to stop myself now.
Well, your intelligence and expertise is obvious. Really quick question. What is, in layman's terms, quickly, the difference between a title and a deed?
Yeah. So, okay. A deed is a legal document that states who the owner of the property is, who sold the property, who purchased the property, maybe how much they paid for it. And it states the legal description of the property, where it's located, all that. Title is more of a concept. Title is like a term that describes the ownership generally. So when we're talking about cloudy title, for example, we're talking about who owns the property. It's cloudy because we don't know who owns the property. You may have a deed, which in legal terms, we refer to that as color of title because it's an actual document. But you may still have title to property without a deed because you are an heir. Let's say the deed is in your dead grandma's name. You still have title to the property. It's just cloudy. You just don't have a deed in your name, but you have title to the property. It's just not in a deed. You're still an owner though, and no one can they can take that from you, but that's a whole nother conversation. But you have title to the property. So title is more of a concept. A deed is an actual physical document.
Good explanation.
Wow. All right. Listen, this was not enough time, but I certainly learned a lot. 15 seconds, final thoughts from everybody.
Chris, you go first.
Go ahead, Martin.
All right. You're never too young to start an estate plan. People die at all ages. Don't wait till you're old.
Yes.
Now, watch the black people not be on time.
Yeah, do it now. Like, even if you don't have kids, do it now. Because an estate
right.
plan is you have an estate, even if you don't have kids, even if you don't think you have an estate. If you have kids and you don't have any money, you have an estate because your kids are your estate. Like, your will says where they go, so get it now.
Rulon.
Great information. JC, amazing info. I'm not lying to you. I took notes.
Thank you.
I'm so excited for the audience to hear this information. We basically got a cheat code today, the cheat sheet. So thank you for providing the information.
Herman?
Hey, I just want to thank everybody, thank the audience, thank all the panelists. And I got to thank our partners from Freddie Mac who identified JC as a resource. So because they identified her, we were able to bring her here. So I thank everybody. This was great.
Well, on behalf of the NFCC, Wells Fargo, Gregory Varner and Associates, Urban One, thank each of you for being here today and giving us this information. And to all of you in our audience who are observing this, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.